I am getting to be tired. um, I mean, granted, I'm fine while I'm driving. It's just after I'm done driving, body collapses. Last time you saw me, I was in California. Had a pretty crazy day. The next morning, I got up. It was on the south side, I think, of San Francisco, is where I was finally able to go. Drove all the way over to Santa Maria. Did my delivery. I think that one went pretty well. But I uh, the location I was dropping off at had a place where the road was pretty decent. I mean, it was like 3 lanes wide or something like that. But it was all like it was as wide as that. But there was a car parked right next to the entrance of the driveway. And as I was going in and I started to make my really wide turn, I made the turn and instantly, you know how it is, you start to get red flags. And so I quickly put on the brakes and I looked, and the rear of the trailer was starting to go, just starting to approach towards the front. Didn't hit anything, but I was getting close to it. And so I looked at that and I was like, okay, I need to back up. And at this point, I was like, you know what? I went about as wide as I could. So at this point, I went down the road, turned around, U-turned, and then came back and pulled in. Did fine, dropped off my deliveries. What the routine I've gotten into that I like is I will wake up early in the morning, probably around midnight, 12:30, 1, something like that, and I will drive in a bunch of hours without rush hour. Now, what I will do is I will time it so that way I'll know approximately, and I'll look for road construction and stuff like that if there is any on Google Maps or something like that. And I will anticipate there to be a delay of a certain amount, maybe just a few minutes, maybe depending on how big the line is or whatever, the line that tells you there's a traffic jam or something like that. But I try to hit big cities when it's not going to be a peak time. So I left Santa Maria, and I tell you, it's a shame that California beauty is wasted on California. I'm not a fan of that state at all. But it is a very pretty state. I like the Northern California area. Drove down the 101, right on the coast. Wow. Beautiful. I mean, you see the hills on the left, you see the ocean on the right, you see all the RVs that are literally parked on this little road that goes right, just you off the road, you step down a little bit and you're in the Pacific Ocean. All these really nice houses down there that it flattens out behind, and then there's a little tiny cliff that's only a few feet, and then it goes in the Pacific Ocean. If there's a storm, they're in trouble. But I tell you, once you get close to Los Angeles, game over. I mean, you're going to run into traffic all over the place. By the time I dropped off in Santa Maria, I got to Los Angeles by about 11 a.m. It was probably about the best possible scenario. Got to the place I was delivering in Paris, and pull up there, and they say, go ahead and, go ahead and drop this secure, unsecure, drop your straps. And they as soon as I did that, the guys all went inside and they sat around and talked for like half an hour to 45 minutes. I thought it was like a lunch break or something, but they were just in there chit-chatting and laughing with the door closed. Then they came out and they loaded me up, or they took the boxes and then they loaded me up. And then they said you can't strap here, you got to go outside down the road. So I left and I went and pulled out on the main road, going very slow to make sure that you don't have the pod shift or anything. Went outside, through the straps, and then because it was about a mile, maybe not even mile long road, I went ahead and accelerated up to at least 5 miles an hour, went down a couple of stop signs, went ahead and stopped and because the rule is you got to check within the first 3 hours, or I'm sorry, within the first 50 miles, you have to do a load securement check. So I went probably about a half a mile, not even enough for the odometer to tick over, but I did. I went like half a mile, maybe even more than that, because it was a long way. But I was looking to see if the odometer was going to tick over, and it didn't. But I went ahead and did my load security check, and then left there and hit the road. I went to the first, traffic, I want to just get out of LA. I wanted to get out of LA and see how far I could get. And I got to a Flying J, I think in Thousand Palms, California. And so I stopped there for the night. And I had a friend that lived kind of close to there because I know a lot of people that live in the LA area. And I had a friend that was fairly close to that, so I had dinner with him, and then we hung out a little bit, and then called it, and got up at 12:30, 1 a.m., and then started driving east. California, approaching Arizona, there was a lot of construction even in the middle of the night, and there was construction to the point where it would literally stop you, and you had nothing to do. You would just stopped for 20, 30 minutes. So I went ahead and at that point jumped out of driving status, and I called it a construction delay, because it's honestly true. I can't drive, and I'm just literally stuck. I can't pull over, can't do anything. So I went ahead and did that. And every time you do a status change, you got to do your load security check. And since I was literally stopped on the interstate, I was like, well, okay. So I went ahead and jumped out and did the load security check, jumped back in. Wait. Finally, they released us. When you get to Arizona, pretty state, a lot of cactus. When you start to go north up towards Flagstaff from Phoenix, it's really annoying that they shove everybody that is towing a vehicle, towing a trailer, into the right lane. And then they put a solid white line there, so that way you're not supposed to cross it. But it doesn't matter if you're in a semi. It doesn't matter if you're in an RV pulling a trailer that does not have the torque or horsepower. So you're stuck going behind a vehicle that's going 20 some odd miles an hour going up this hill. And then as soon as you get on the other side of that, it's 6 to 8 degree drop, usually about 6 degrees, and then you just ride the jakes all the way down. But I tell you, being forced to go into the right lane, it's so irritating. I was happy to be out of California and their reduced 55 mile an hour speed limits while everybody else is going 70. Because every other state is more realistic and post the speed limit for at least 65. And when it says truck 65 and other traffic 70 or 75 or 80, no problem. 65 is where my governor is on the truck anyway. So I'm not that worried about it. It's just 55 feels overly slow. 65, even if I wasn't bouncing off the governor, that's a good amount. Granted, I'd like to go farther because when I'm just driving long haul, I don't really take breaks for anything. The only breaks I really ever stop for is fuel, or when I do the load securement checks and the trailer integrity verification. So every 150 miles or every 3 hours, whichever comes first, I'll pull over a rest area, or like a tire check area, something like that, and I'll jump out, quickly do it, hop back in, hit the road again. And I have my dry erase board that you've seen, and I'm making note of the time and the mileage when I do that, so that way I can glance over at it at a glance and see where I need to stop again. So drove all the way through Arizona, went up, stopped, got into New Mexico, finally stopped for the day. I think it was exit 108 at a casino, dancing something casino, very nice location. And when I pulled in there was nobody there. When I left there the following morning, well, actually, I had to do a reset there. I only had 4 hours left at the end of the thing, so I went ahead and stopped. The routine I normally do is I get up really early and I drive until the early afternoon. Then I find a truck stop, and there's usually plenty of parking, or at least I might have to get into a parking space and finagle my way in there. If I wait too long in the afternoon or even the evening, then it's a fight. So that's when it's a little annoying. But so anyway, I went ahead and stopped there, and I had a friend that lived nearby there too. So I went ahead and left my truck in the truck stop parking lot, and he picked me up, and I hung out with him the rest of the day, the next day, and then took me back to the trailer and went to bed. Got up the next morning, drove all the way across New Mexico into Texas, drove the rest of the way across New Mexico into Amarillo, Texas, and then up to Oklahoma City, where I stopped for the day. Usually, because, if the governor cut off at 65 miles an hour, and you can only drive 11 hours a day, that's up to 715 miles. You're probably not ever going to see that when you have to do load securement checks every 150 miles, and it requires you to stop, pull over someplace at a truck stop or someplace in order to get out and check it. You just can't pull over the side of the road and do it and then, accelerate again. You have to pull over someplace safe. So the best days I've had so far are driving long haul across the country. Provided I don't get stuck in traffic or something like that, it's usually, it'll stop you and it'll be annoying, but if you run into traffic. But I've been pretty good about being able to get about 650 miles in, or just a little bit left. Usually around 6:30 to 6:45 is usually about the world I'll live in when I'm driving, including my load security checks. So yeah, I got to Oklahoma City. The next day, I got on I-146 headed toward Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I kept seeing it say it was a toll road. Interstate was a toll road. And I was like, okay, does this mean I'm going to have to pay for this and get reimbursement? But no, Schneider has that under control. You pull up there and they kind of look down the thing and then they give you a thumbs up. And you're like, all right, great, thanks. And of course, I go, as soon as I hit the road again, I'm cackling because I'm so excited. This is in the middle of the night because I got to Tulsa. I got through all of there, and then I got to my next location. I have a friend that lives in Oklahoma City, so I went and hung out with him. So I had 4 days in a row that I was hanging out with a friend. And then the next day, Oklahoma, gunned it, and I got to someplace in Indiana. Got from Oklahoma through Illinois, through the corner of Illinois, through Missouri, and I got into Indiana. Halpagnay, something like that. I forgot what it's called. Let me see. Well, technically, I guess it's Warrenton. It was Warrenton, Indiana. Stayed there. Truck stop. That was actually okay. That was last night. That was kind of a weird situation at the Flying J. I went in and reserved a shower, and it said 5 available. Cool. Shower. Sat there, waited. After about 45 minutes, I went into the building, and still waiting. Finally, it says, your shower is ready. So I go over there, I type in my code, I open up the door, and I see, the shower was on, and I see someone pop their face out, and I see this guy, and I'm like, whoa, close the door. And I said, hey, there's someone in this shower. And then there's another guy across the way, and one down. He says, hey, there's someone in this one. And then the employees over there were just like rolling their eyes. They're like, yeah, the system reset itself. Something like, yeah, we got to place these people into showers that are not occupied. I felt bad. The guy, posted face around the corner was like, looking at me. It was a real quick. I opened up the door, kind of quick, and then saw the shower was on, and so I paused, and his face pops around, and I closed the door. So that was like a second and a half total. Anyway, at that point, I was paranoid. I'm probably going to have to get myself a one of those little ramp-looking blocks, jam under the door, so that way, just if they don't have proper locks on it, I don't want that to happen. Also tried the steak burgers. They were regular burgers, I tell you. It was 2 for $8, and that was interesting. It was by no means great food, but it was a burger, just cheeseburger. That's fine. Was I expecting gourmet over at a truck stop? No, it's just anyway. So got up this morning early, and today frustrated me because I got to my first location, and the hours for pods are 6 to 3. It's kind of a universal time, and I got there about 5:40, and I knew I was early, but it was early in the morning, and I was doing good, so I went ahead and waited. They opened up the gate, I went inside, jumped out with my paperwork, went inside, and the guy, I kind of waited, and then after he greeted me, I gave him the paperwork and said, "Hey, yeah, just I'm dropping off," and dropping off. I think it was just one box there, 1 7-footer, and he says, "Okay, we'll get you at 8." And I'm like, "At 8?" He says, "Yeah, we got to get our own trucks out on the road." Now, this has happened before. A couple other locations have done that and said, "No, we got to get our own trucks on the road first, so you're waiting." That's annoying to me. I wish pods would get these locations, kind of get them, have it at least, if they're not going to start serving semis until around 7:30 or 8, or in this location it was 8. If they're going to do that, that's fine. Just at least make sure that we see the hours of operation that they are serving semis as 8 till whatever, because I would not have shown up there and been waiting for 2 hours, almost 2.5 hours. I went ahead and just broke the straps on it and wrapped them up, and I was waiting, and because it's the beginning of the month, there was some assessment videos and continue education Schneider sends out and stuff like that. So I went ahead and did that, and then guy came out just after 7. He says, "The guy's here, already here, so he's gonna go ahead and help you out." And I said, "Great." So I'm waiting out there. I'm talking to the guy that was behind me. He was frustrated. He's been on the pods account for about 6 years, and it was still about 8 a.m. before he got me. And it was the same guy that I had talked to at 5:45. Anyway, so at that point, I hit the road. I go up to Tip City, which is only about 150 miles. And when I got up there, that's a busy location. You pull in, you have to go into this white square, and there's a little bit of a queue. So you have to get in line and then wait. As soon as I got through the line, as soon as there was a couple of trucks in front of me, and I pull up there, I get in the thing, I hand the paperwork, and the lady says, "Okay, well, it is now 11. My lunch is until 11:30. I'm like, "Great." So I had to sit there and wait for her to do lunch, and then she came out and took my boxes. And I understand she needs to eat stuff. It's just irritating when it's a small location with only 2 employees and one of them's operating a forklift. Anyway, so I waited, and she's very efficient. So when she was back on the clock, she came by, grabbed the boxes, and they were already unstrapped at that point because I pulled into the box and then I broke all the straps on the three pods. And so she was very efficient, came by there and pulled them all off, and I still didn't have a pre-assignment or anything like that, so there was a Flying J about 2 miles away. I went ahead and went there, or maybe it was a Pilot, one of the two, and I pulled in. As soon as I backed in, pre-assignment ready, Tip City. So I was like, great, I got to turn around and go back there. So at this point, though, there was a queue. There was a line. So I have to get in the line. I have to wait for a few semis in front of me, flatbeds, to get their boxes. So at this point, I'm waiting for almost an hour before it's my turn. And I was so irritated because if I was in the position, I could have gotten my boxes if the order would have come through 10 minutes earlier. Anyway, so got the order, started leaving there, traffic delays in Cincinnati, continued down south. Finally, once I got through the traffic, it just completely bogged down as soon as I got into Kentucky on 75, 71 south. And at that point, I was looking for a truck stop because I was approaching the 1 hour mark left. And I pulled off on a Pilot. It has literally zero parking, and there's a TA on the other side. I try to get into the TA, but I can't see it. It's not in the direction where their sign is. So at this point, I said, you know what? I'm just going to get back. I had like 45 minutes at this point, and the Kentucky's pretty good about truck stops, and they're pretty good about rest areas. So I went ahead and just jumped back on the interstate, went down until 71 and 75 split, went down the 71 split, and as soon as you do that, there's a way station, but it says truck Rest Haven. I'm like, Rest Haven sounds good. So I pull in there. That's where I am right now. Interestingly enough, when I pulled in, there was like a camera flash, like the camera that they have at the way station. It flashed, and that startled me for a second because I was pulling in and slowing down. I hadn't gotten to the part that says 30 miles an hour yet, and it was closed anyway. But as I was slowing down, I see this flash. I'm like, what was the flash for? Maybe it's because it's a Rest Haven. They take pictures of all the vehicles that come in. Hopefully that's it. Anyway, I parked, and went ahead and did my post trip. And by the time I did my DVIR, I look around and all the trucks that were there when I pulled in there, which is only like 8, big parking lot, they all are vanished. They all disappeared. So I looked around. I was like, I'm the only truck here, and there's one car. Okay. So I went ahead and at that point I said I'm going to take a quick bathroom break, grab some water, went back outside, and I started looking at my directions and getting my ETAs and stuff ready for tomorrow. Based on where I am right now, I'm going to be able to make it to the Nashville area to do my delivery around 6 a.m. because it also goes back in time from Eastern to Central. So it's about a 4-hour drive if it were still Eastern. It's about a 5-hour drive. I'll probably arrive a little bit early before 6 a.m. So hopefully it's not another location that's like, oh no, we got to get our own boxes out first. Hopefully they'll be able to serve me right at 6 a.m. As soon as I'm done there, I'm going to hit the road and do a drop off in Atlanta as well. And then I have my 4 days of home time. I have been out now for about 3.5 weeks. And I did my week with the TE. And as soon as we were done driving for that day, which was, I think it was about a 12-hour day or something like that, the last day with the TE. Maybe it's less. I can't remember. We had to get in the rental car and drive back to Atlanta. And then by the time we got there and I got home after dropping him off, I think it was like 11:30 p.m. Maybe it was 10:30. I can't remember. But whatever time it was, they said, this is the time that they said, can you get your truck on Monday morning? I said, sure. Can you drive overnight Sunday to get it? Sure. And then he says, all right, we'll set it up for you. Thanks. And then I get this message that says, okay, well, your car is going to be reserved from Sunday morning. And then you check in your hotel at 3. I'm like, great, I got to leave during the day now. So I went home after coming back from Texas. I went home as I stopped for the night, dropped off, and then I parked the truck at Schneider, and then went back just went back the next day and then headed straight north. But it'll be nice to actually get home for a few days. It's been a while. So there you go. Really, really happy. I just got to do about 240 miles tomorrow to get to the first location. Actually, it's about 190 miles, I think, to the first location tomorrow in Antioch, Nashville area, just south of Nashville. And then about 40 miles back to Atlanta. Hopefully I'll arrive early afternoon there, back in the Central time, or the leave Central and get back to Eastern. And then I'll be home with my girls to have dinner. That'll be nice. Let's see. The big thing that I would say that was a catch for me is I talked to Michelle, the guy that I trained the week in the TE. We talk every few days. He mentioned to me, I mentioned to him, I said, I'm waiting for them to send me home. He says, oh no, you have to request it. I said, really? They don't manage our schedule? They don't just, he says, no, they'll send you out as long as they can. You have to request 2 weeks in advance when you want to go home. I'm like, 2 weeks in advance? I wish they would have told me that 2 weeks ago. The big thing I would say about Schneider is once you understand the system and what's expected, it's rinse, repeat, and you're able to manage your hours and stuff. Like, I understand they need to have ETAs. I understand Pods needs to also have an ETA. So I submit those and I update it daily when I have a load. Except maybe the first day when I do the pickup, because at that point, unless I'm delivering the next day or the day after, that's when I will look at it and I'll say, okay, well, I don't know yet what it is. I'm going to hit the road and try to get down the road, and then as soon as I stop and I do my trailer, I do my post trip about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, whenever it happens to be out of hours, approaching the end of my 11 or 14-hour clock. At that point, I go ahead and do the trip planning and stuff for at least the next day. I usually try to, on the first day, get a hang of what I anticipate doing and how far I anticipate getting there, and do an estimation. So far, I've been within a 2-hour window on everything. This morning, because of the delay, I had to push back. I had to resubmit the Pods ETA and then the ETA to my leads also, because they delayed me for 2 hours. But overall, I'm happy on the Pods account. I'm sure there's drama on every account, but this one, there seems to be a lot less of it. If only the non-corporate accounts, the contractor accounts or whatever, I wish they would have their act together a little bit more to be able to serve us during the hours, 6 to 3. The other driver that was behind me at the first location, he said that some of these locations they won't serve you at all unless you're there before 2. If you're not there an hour before, they're not going to even bother with you. Some of these other locations, they'll take an hour lunch break and they'll shut down. There's one location he was telling me about. I'm not going to name it because it's hearsay since it came from him. He says if you go there and the person doesn't like your tone, if you're like, yeah, it took me a little longer and wasn't expecting this kind of a wait, they'll take attitude and say, come back tomorrow. Nope, not going to serve you. Come back tomorrow. And I'm like, wow, really? He says, yeah, they did that to him. So, but he's been on the account for like 6 years, so maybe this is an old type thing. But he was telling me about a few of the locations you go to, and he says most of the time they're really nice people and they're on the ball. Sometimes they're very slow, very, very not the most personable. Anyway, every location's different, and so far, it's once you have the system down and you understand what's expected of you, it's not hard to do. One thing that did happen yesterday is as I was driving, I see the truck in front of me. He puts on his brake real quickly and then he whips. He whips the truck into the next lane over. And ends up being that he was, it's not a cone, but it's like a barrel. One of those like thin plastic barrel looking things that's maybe 3.5 feet tall, something like that. But it's got like lights, a little light on the top of it. Well, apparently the wind had blown it over, and he like slammed on the brakes and turned, and I mean he was going to highway speeds, and it did not look like a very safe maneuver that he did. He did get it under control though, but then that barrel was still rolling, and then it started rolling the other way. So it was like the wind caught it. It stopped, and then it started going the other way. And so like I'm slowing down. I quickly put on the brakes and start slowing down, but don't slam them on because then you lose control if you turn. And I'm looking at this as I'm slowing down a little bit, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go right. So I start to go right, and it rolls back towards me. That's the direction it picked. So I realized that it's a 2-lane interstate, and I was already in the right lane, and there was a car behind me on the left, so I couldn't go left. I slow down and try to go right, but if I go too far off that lane, I'm going to hit the shoulder. And I don't want to end up, whipping the truck or anything. But when I put on the brakes and then released them and went right, and that thing blew it blew it right into my front left tire. I checked, no damage, not at all. It just hit the front left tire and then it basically just kicked it out. No damage to the skirt, no damage to anything on the front or anything like that. It was just there was a little bit of dirt. That I looked at it, I says, oh, tell me this isn't a mark. And then I wiped it down. I'm like, oh, look at that. And then once it dried, I looked at it again. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with it. So that's good. But the system, the automated system in the truck said, critical event, rollover or something like that. And I'm like, rollover? I guess it's because I put on the brakes and I turned the wheel. I didn't do it, make the thing like really whip over. I mean, it felt gradual. I was kind of surprised by that. And this is me being honest. If I did something wrong, I would claim it. I would own it. But I put on the brakes, and then I was watching to see where it went with the wind because it had gone this way and started to roll back, and then it kind of slowed down. And so I was like, right's going to be the safe way because if I go left, I'll hit that car. So I start going that way, and then the wind catches it again. This is in I think in Missouri at this point, maybe Indiana. But then it hit my wheel, my tire. But I mean, I would have been fine even if I hit it because it was a lightweight little plastic thing and it wasn't going to cause damage or anything like that. I did with the steering wheel hard though. That's what was really weird to me is that I was just even I guess at that speed it didn't even it didn't feel like it was tipping or anything. For whatever reason, though, it was enough to make the thing say critical event rollover or whatever. I'm like, that wasn't rollover. That was me putting on the brakes real quickly and then trying to steer around something. So far, I've not been contacted by Schneider. There was that event that happened, and then there was the braking event that I told you when I was coming back to Atlanta, where I was trying the different Jake brakes and I was slowing down, and it like releases the Jake when it turns on the next level of it, and that had me going a little bit faster than I wanted to. So I was putting on the brakes, and I saw where I was supposed to stop, and so I was putting on the brakes. Said I'll stop about 10 feet away. If I put on the brakes too fast, then I'm concerned about it just whatever. It wasn't that heavy of a load, but put on the brakes, and apparently when you get inside of about 20 feet. The truck panics because I wasn't going fast, but it slams on the brakes and it starts like, I guess almost like an emergency brake thing because it was hepatic or hepatic, whatever it is. It's like quickly, rapidly press and releasing the brake. And it went, and at that point, it kind of, slowed down a little bit faster. But I was like, okay. And it was like for the last half a second. Maybe three quarters of a second. Oops, that's my timer. The last 3/4 of a second, maybe. Again, I was going to stop in time. But I guess Schneider is looking at the cameras and realizing that, the situation. They realize, because they haven't contacted me either time. It's not like I'm weaving in the lanes. I'm not blast. I usually have a lot of gap in front of me. At that point, I think it was my first week out, the tail end of the first week out, and so I had gone from stage 2 to stage 3 on the Jakes, and then it like releases the Jakes in order to go into stage 3. And at that point, I was like, okay, so it didn't just engage to stage 3 because I don't think at that point I used stage 3 at all, or if I did, it was like a real quick thing. But there's not a whole lot of rolling hills or anything like that going out to Texas. When I got to the Rockies, there were, and I went into stage 3 a lot, but by then I had figured it out. But then that was the other thing is that if you're going to be driving, and even if it's just a quick, like this, you're not trying to flip the thing, but if you're trying to quickly start a lane change and then, or you just do a little bit of a quick, not like this, more of a this, I guess that was enough to trip that little roll sensor or whatever. Like I said, I'm very aware of the speed I'm going. I'm very aware of the way that the truck feels, where it is positioned in the lane and stuff. That did not feel very aggressive because it didn't whip or anything like that. Like if you turn the wheel really hard in a car and you go fling in one direction while the car goes the other, wasn't any of that. I have not hit a turn yet where I'm like, oh, that kind of thing. I'm not going to do that either because well, I say that. I need to knock on wood or something because I don't want that to end up happening. But a lot of it is managing your speed. As long as you manage your speed, you're going to be fine. And I always slow down well in advance, making sure that, I don't even hit the brake a lot of the times until the very end. It's almost a game to me to enable, to engage the Jakes and slow down enough without hitting the brake. I like to do that. Anyway. There you go. So if you're interested in the pods on the Schneider account, it's a good account to be on. Once you understand it, I know that there was me and there was 2 other guys in the flatbed class. One of those guys already quit. I don't know why, but apparently he just got overwhelmed or something like that. It's not a difficult account as long as you stay on top of your ETAs. They need it. Pods needs it because they have to position, they have to plan on the certain number of drivers going different places in the country. Your DTLs need it because they need to plan to keep you busy. And if they don't know when you're going to show up, they can't give you another job. And then Pods is going to be like, well, I thought we had drivers. We need to schedule this stuff. And then Schneider's like, well, we need to schedule the stuff. Why are my drivers sending an ETA? So I understand the ETAs thing. You got to send it. It's not like it's a tough job. It's routine. It's repetitious. The biggest thing is communication has been a little bit lacking. Now, granted, I don't find myself needing to speak to people very often anymore. I don't need to talk to my DTL because I understand the system. It just would have been nice if at the very beginning they would have explained things to me. If I do need to call for some reason, I haven't called them for over a week, it would be nice to have a path that could get me pretty quickly through it. Now, my lead, her name is Audrey. She's been very good ever since I got her a contact email. As soon as I talked to her on the phone, and I said, "Can I get your email address?" Every time I send her an email, she's very good about things. I even said, when after talking to Michelle, and I said, I just learned that I'm supposed to put in a 2-week notice for home time. Can you work with me on this first time? Because I didn't know. It's one of those, I'm new here, so it's one of those policies I didn't know about, and no one ever told me. So if you could work with me this first time, I'll make sure you have your 2-week notice in the future. And she made it happen. That's good. A lot of it I find is communication. If you communicate your thoughts, it fills them in, keeps them in the loop. The ETAs are really what they need. You don't need to chit chat and send them a long email or whatever. Since it's my last day, I did send her an email and said, thank you so much for pulling the strings and getting me on a path back to Atlanta. Funny thing is, I looked at the tablet and I get a message saying, were you able to get home time worked out? Because after we talked, I haven't seen a request come through. I'm like, I sent the request. So I emailed that to her and I said, do I need to do it someplace else that I'm not aware of? So we'll see. I'll follow the procedures. It's just like any other company, you'll have a procedure you got to follow. And there's going to be some frustration when you go to client sites or something like that because every customer is different. It's like, well, we're not going to get to you until 8 a.m. It's only happened a couple of times since I've been out there. I've got to get my trucks out first. But, it happens. It's not the biggest stress that you run into is trying to manage the traffic, trying to manage to get yourself into a parking spot when everyone else is fighting for those positions too. So if you drive from the early morning hours, like just after midnight, you're going to be fine. You're going to hit a lot less traffic, and then try to stagger like between 1 and 2 a.m. if you're approaching a big city. Leave by those times. So that way you'll get out, you'll get on the interstate, and that way you can hit a major city and get through it before rush hour traffic really starts. So like if I'm driving across the country and I know that I'm going to be hitting a major city at a certain point, then what I'll do is I'll look at right before I jump back on the road after doing my load securement check. I'll quickly bring up my phone because I always keep my phone back here when I'm driving. I never put it in the front. I always have it charging and it's in a case up here. I don't want there to ever be any confusion about me driving, and looking at the phone or something like that. Never do. But if what I'll do is I'll do the check, I'll jump out, and as soon as that happens, I crank it back up while it's building up air pressure if it needs to. I'll jump back here, quickly bring up the thing, and I'll say, okay, what's traffic look like in the city that I'm going to be in tomorrow? And I'll say it looks clear. So I'm going to expect it to be that way. Keep in mind that weekends, it's going to be more clear. So yeah. On holidays, it will also usually be lighter unless it's a holiday that involves a lot of traffic in or out of the city. Got pretty lucky with it a couple of days ago. So, all right. Well, that's it. I'll end this update there. A little bit of information there about the inner workings of Schneider. I think that if you don't stick with it because you get frustrated early, that's a problem. That's on you. Again, it's not a difficult... The company does things the way they need to. I think it would be a little better if they communicated with you. It spent like maybe half an hour with you when you first start to make sure they answer your questions and to make sure things are ready. Explain the system. But aside from that, no real issues, no real complaints or anything like that about the company so far. Obviously, I wish I were making more money, but they have been really good about, probably because I've been sitting in the ETAs, they've been really good about rescheduling me to hit the road again. So that way, when I do my last drop, I pick up there and I go someplace else. Little on the optimistic side with the California job, it said due in 2 days. And I was like, I only have like 3 hours left to get from Seattle, Washington to Portland, Oregon, including getting my boxes. And then I have to find a truck stop. It was a little bit over 3 hours. And I was like, I had just driven in from Montana. So, early morning hours. But, and I was like, got to wake up early and drive into California, and then I had to the next day. But the next day was when they were due, 2 days. That's like, I could have pushed it back another day, but I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can get this done. If you know how to trip plan, there's always going to be a little bit that's going to throw you. There's going to be a little bit of rush hour, you're going to have to encounter, a little bit of road construction. It might be slower speed limits going through California. Might be any kind of a bunch of different things. Might be weather. You got to plan on that, or at least anticipate it, just like you anticipate other things on the road, and you're going to be fine. Okay, so there's my first 3 weeks, 3 weeks plus out on the road. My little bit of wisdom, making it sound like I'm some old jaded pro, but I'm not. Very young pro. So there you go. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. All right, you take care.